Right on, brother. Okay. So we're here outside of the Court of Queen's Bench in Saskatoon. As you can see behind me, there are hundreds of people gathered here in support of Colten Boushie.
Okay, if everyone's going to move in a little bit closer, please.
We're going to hear from some speakers in a moment. I see Jade Tootoosis, Colten Boushie's family members are also here, and like I say, there are hundreds of supporters. So we will bring you the comments from the people as they come live here. Obviously, a lot of people here upset with last night's verdict, last night's acquittal of Gerald Stanley, and a lot of people here, are not going to give up this story anytime soon. So I see Jade Tootoosis walking to the platform here. So we will bring you her comments momentarily. But again, I don't know if you saw those wide shots before, but there were, at least a couple hundred people here, many of them holding signs, holding photographs of Colten Boushie.
My name is Eileen Bear.
We're going to go to the stage now. This is Eileen Bear.
Shared event hosted by the Anti-Racist Organization Committee and Idle No More. We're all here because we want to honor the life of Colten Boushie, whose life was taken in an unjust manner. With that being said, I'd like to call on Honoroscapio Dale Whitecap to come and say an opening prayer. Dale has brought some drummers who will sing a song.
Oh
Ptahaya. I'd like to introduce Nancy Gray Eyes, who's also going to sing a song. Thank you, Dale, for that wonderful honor song. Nancy? Thank you, Nancy. With that, we're going to hear from Jade Tootoosis, who is a family member of Colten Boushie.
So this is Jade Tootoosis. This is Colten Boushie's cousin. She was in the courthouse every day watching the hearing and spoke very passionately about something.
I just want to begin by saying thank you. Hi for being here. For being here so quickly. I'm at a bit of a loss of words. This past 24 hours has knocked the wind out of me. My brother did not deserve this. And this past year and a half has been so difficult. Not only to lose him, but to go through a judicial system that is supposed to serve justice for all the people. But instead, based on the color of our skin, based on the color of my brother's skin, From the beginning, the moment he was shot, to the moment that the jury delivered a verdict of not guilty, we saw racism and discrimination, and we were not treated as if we were human beings throughout this entire system. And it saddens me that as I stand here, I've received numerous messages of many other families who've also faced the same injustices that my family has went through this past year, and they pass along their condolences as well. And this has to stop. Indigenous people, our lives are meaningful. We are human beings. We are irreplaceable. Every human being is irreplaceable. But although there was a not guilty verdict yesterday, it just shows the racism that is rampant throughout our province as well as throughout our country. And we need to address it. We need to stand up and say this is enough and this is not right. And to see you all standing here today and gathered here so quickly to show support and to call out the injustices, I thank you from the bottoms of my heart. And you give me strength, you give my family strength, and you are gonna be the momentum that helps us to get justice for Colten as well as all other people throughout the system. So don't be afraid, don't be silent, continue to organize and mobilize, speak out wherever you are, at your kitchen table, to your classrooms, to your workspaces, to into the streets, up to the courthouse stairs. I want you to speak out and know that I stand with you. We stand together, our allies and our Indigenous people alike. We need to have a change in this country. So once again, hi, thank you. And
Is FSIN Chief Bobby Cameron here? Can you give a wave if you're here? Okay, then we will call Vice Chief Pratt.
Thank you so much this afternoon for the introduction. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the Creator today for giving us strength. Obviously, we're not happy with the decision that came out yesterday, the verdict in the trial. And we want to let the Boushie family know, Jade, that we are standing with you in solidarity. And it's an important time that I think we need to gather. When the ruling came out yesterday and the verdict was reached, I can say that a lot of emotions impacted our people, from shock and disbelief to anger and to frustration and to a feeling of hopelessness that we're subject to a justice system that was created to oppress and control Indigenous people. And I want to say that as an organization, we are calling upon the federal government and the Prime Minister for action and justice reform. And when we look at what's happening with the jury selection process, there definitely has to be changes that happen, and we're urging the Federal Justice Minister to take that action immediately. We're calling for an inquiry. We're calling for the government to act and to obviously make the changes that are necessary for Indigenous people. We represent the fastest growing demographic in the province of Saskatchewan, and we're willing to work with our treaty partners in the spirit of reconciliation. But when rulings like this happen, it sets the relationship back. But I'm hopeful that the Premier and that the government of Saskatchewan will take notice and work with us to ensure that justice is done for the family and that the life of Colten Boushie will not be in vain. So today, I encourage our people, let's show the country, let's show the world what we are made of. Let's show them that we are generous, that we are kind, that when they came here to our lands and our territories, it was not to be attacked with arrow or spears, but our hands were open to work with them as partners. And we haven't had that in this country since the British North America Act was created and passed. All along the process in history, we've never been consulted. While we were signing treaties here with Alexander Morris, MacDonald government was drafting the Indian Act to control and oppress and take our children away from us. And that's something that has to change. And if Canada and Saskatchewan are serious about reconciliation, we want more than words and tears. We want action, and we want to say in the control and destiny of our rights and for our children and for future generations. So I encourage our people to show kindness, to show generosity, to show the people of this region what we are made of. Let's honor the spirit of our ancestors that signed treaty, that agreed to work together, that agreed to share this land so that we could all benefit from it. I encourage you to do that today, my friends. Talk with your loved ones. Hug your children. Let them know that there's a better hope. We can never lose hope for the future. We can never lose hope that things will change. And always remember this, that one thing history has shown us, that it's always on the right side of justice, and we are on the right side of history with our issue today with the family. So I encourage you today to pray for the family, pray for the leadership in the days and weeks to come, because we must stand together and we must demand changes to control our own destiny and for our inherent rights, for not only for our people today, but for the children that are coming after us today. So thank you very much to the family. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and let you know that our organization, the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, our chief, our executive, our 74 First Nations are standing strong with the Boushie family, and we're going to see changes. Thank you very much today.
So that again was FSIN Vice Chief David Pratt, and you can hear just the thunderous applause from.
I'd like to call up the STC Chief, Mark Arcand.
Now this is the Chief of the Saskatoon Tribal Council, Mark Arcand.
Good afternoon, friends, family. I took off my hat today because I want to show everybody I'm brown. I'm a strong First Nations person, and everybody has to be proud of who they are. And every First Nations person that's here today and non-First Nations that are here today, we are going to work together to make a difference. What happened is a tragedy, and I was not going to speak today unless I got permission from the family, because it's not about me today. It's about the family. It's about the people. It's not about politics. It can't be about politics. It has to be about those children that are in this crowd today. We have to fix this province. There's something wrong with this province that's affecting First Nations people, and we have to stand united to make a difference for our children. Yes! There is no compromise. Nothing less than that is more important to us as people that are all gathered here today, because we believe. And if you didn't believe, you wouldn't be here. That something happened in the last 24 hours that wasn't right.
It hasn't been 24 hours, it's been 24 years.
24 years. And for me, when I stand here as the Saskatoon Tribal Council Chief, we do not wish this upon anybody. But I'm going to guarantee you this. We are going to challenge the status quo, because we all need to make a difference. If you agree with that, let's hear you, because that's the way it has to be. We have to do this together. Vice Chief David Pratt made it clear when we signed treaty there was two people shaking hands. The First Nations people have honored that treaty. And people have to acknowledge that. The system that we have today is broken. And we all have to stand up. I encourage everybody that's here today to tweet, to Facebook, that we all stand together to make a difference for our people, for every person that matters. We don't want families to go through this anymore. We went through that 20 years ago with the Stone Child Inquiry here in this city, and we've come together to be stronger. Now we've got another situation where this justice system is not changing. We have to do what's best for our people. And today, we're hosting a press conference at the White Buffalo Youth Lodge at 4 o'clock to talk about reconciliation. And I'm proud to say this, in the city of Saskatoon, we work with the mayor and the council, and we lead the way. There's 72 organizations that are part of reconciliation in this city, but the rest of the province is not reconciling. We have to make that change, and we have to do that through this voice of the city, because we believe we can make a difference for our people. We have to believe that. That's why you're here today. And to the Boushie family, you've lost a brother, a son, and a friend. But he'll never be forgotten, because today he's helping us make change in history. And we have to honor that, because it took a young man, 22 years old, to sacrifice for something over materialistic things. Over materialistic things. Those are more important than a person's life. That's backwards. This gentleman could have been something special. He could have been a hero to somebody. He was going to be a father. He was going to be everything that we all wanted to be for children. So we can't forget, but we all have to work together. And with that, I want to say hi, and God bless everybody for being here today. Thank you.
That again was STC, Saskatoon Tribal Council Chief, Mr. Arkan, Chief Arkan.
I'd like to call on Darlene Okomason Scotty from Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women.
So this is Darlene Okomason Scott. She's an advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad all of you are here. Pat yourselves on the back. Give each other a hug. You're doing reconciliation right now. I know it's really, really shaky, and we're mortified, we're discouraged, we're falling apart, but this boy's death, it can't be in vain. As a co-chair on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, we have to commend the strength, the fortitude of Debbie Baptiste, of Jade Tootoosis, who endured the day of the death, autopsy, funeral, court, online racial slurs, threats, not just her, but the whole territory around Red Pheasant. It was terrible to watch all across the country, and especially in our province. Indigenous women have such strength. Debbie loved her son. He was loved. He's missed. Over and over the 12 years I've been doing this work on women, the worst thing to hear is the anguish of a mother crying in court. It pierces your heart. It's not right. But you know what? We got our ancestors. This is our land. We're not going anywhere. Prairies have such a hard time, but we also have people that want to work together. They want to build this nation. They want it to get better. What I ask all of you is try to keep engaging with each other. Try to not name call. Try not to be insulting. There is rage here. There is shock. There's trauma. Where was the support for the witnesses? Why did the judge in the mid-trial, why did he talk to the jurors about the testimonies of those young people? It should have been mistrialed at that point. You have a Crown prosecutor that was really ineffective. And I'm really glad that people are calling on him across the country. And what about the judge? The same judge that sat in the Nerlin trial in Prince Albert, the same judge presided at this trial. That's an indication of how this province is systemically using people like that to just and decide and lead this province, and that is terrible. It's disgusting. Over and over in the last 24 hours and over the year and a half, so many people talked about flat tires, running out of gas, having to walk to a stranger's yard, worrying if they're going to live because their wife is sitting in a car because they ran out of their gas or their truck broke down. Just because they're Aboriginal people. Right now, young people are really feeling like they're fair game for being shot. It's already on buy and sell. Fake profiles on social media saying it's okay now to shoot our people. But I want to leave all of you with the notion and the strength and the love and the forgiveness that Debbie has shown to the process. They remained dignified throughout the whole process. I don't know about all of you, but I probably wouldn't have been dignified. We have to commend the strength of all the women in our communities and all the poor men that feel like they don't matter. Well, you matter. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Chief Wolpass.
Ano ako magantik? Pamwes kamat speaks kon. Initinanas magkuhtawi no. Pe mausagun go ako tak pe tutak. Mina nitinanas kamaus ko. Jade. Potanigan ka pe pix ko ategak. Moi konte gam no ako magantik. Kap ni gani hits ko. Maga miche to tagak yogak mayai. Iksiyo itamaon. Taya no. Dan sa magong gat my spike. Dan sa magaw kutawi no quick sta magwag. Kaya magong get sa kay wapati ko kutawi no. Hatse po kay team no it muy tamago agok. Sagi tok. With the toskem tok. Wago tok. Ikaw magtandog at may temik no ako magantik. Michet, kung ako magan no mo insto tam na iyon. Iwin tahta mo na ikaw. Haga Simon. Pawik, pakawik ko tagapetot. In the name of the Creator, I greet all of you for being here. I want to acknowledge Jade. When you go back to our prophecies and you go back to our kokums and our elders, what they talk about our woman taking that leadership role. And to see the strength that she has coming here to talk to each and every one of us, it takes a lot of power. But then again, that's the resilience. And that's who our Indigenous women are. They're very powerful. I also want to thank her partner, Jade Tootoosis, for standing by her through all this hardship. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of our relatives, the non-native people who are here, and I thank each and every one of you for being here. We cannot do this alone. Within our teachings as Indian people, we are taught to love one another. Within our teachings as First Nations people, a life is worth more than a material. Because that's who we are, and that's where we come from. I look around, and I see a lot of young people who are here. And Saskatchewan is in crisis. I thought there was going to be the change that was required back in 1991 when one of our own got shot in Prince Albert. Here we go again. What is it going to take for the leadership to hear each and every one of our voice that we want a better place to live where we can peacefully coexist as it pertains to treaty? A prime example of what a good relationship can do is to look at our worship, our mayor, Charlie Clark. He's not about division. He's about trying to get the job done and making sure that we all feel safe and comfortable here in Saskatoon. To our leadership right across Canada, let's stand behind a family. Let's stand for the change that is required. And if government is not going to move the way they should, then let's move them. Thank you.
That was Chief Delbert Wapas, the chief of the Thunderchild First Nation. And in the background there, I don't know if you can see, but Mayor Clark, the mayor of Saskatoon, got quite emotional when Delbert Wapas mentioned his name as someone who's working towards reconciliation.
On the request of Jade Tootoosis, we'd like to call on the family representative, Chris Murphy.
This is going to be Chris Murphy. This is the legal representation for the Boushie family. He was in court every
Good afternoon.
day.
My name is Chris Murphy, and I have been with the family as their legal counsel since 2016. And as I said last night after the verdict, it has been one of the greatest honors of my life to be welcomed into the Baptiste family. And I can say that I did not know how strong people could be until I got to see them fight through the last 18 months. Colten Boushie died on August 9th, 2016. And since his death, it has been readily apparent that there have been systemic injustices that have been revealed throughout this process. And I believe that there is a darkness in this country, and that Colten's death can help shine a light on that darkness. The people in this province and in this country have to feel what this family has felt. Jade Tootoosis sat in the community center in North Battleford when this jury was chosen. I sat next to her, and as each Indigenous person came forward, they had come potentially from great distances to be potential jurors. Their names had been fortunate enough to be drawn out of the drum. There were 5 out of 45 visibly Indigenous people that came forward. And I, as a defense lawyer, believed that there would not be any Indigenous people on this jury. But the 4th person drawn out of the drum came forward. And this was a beautiful young man with long hair and a bright eye, a bright look in his eye. And he was a perfect potential juror. And I felt in my stomach hope that maybe this person was going to be on this jury. And he stood forward and he was asked to look upon the accused, and the accused was asked to look upon him. And the defense lawyer said the word challenge. And with that word, he left the stage and went back to his home. And the next 4 visibly Indigenous people were challenged as they came forward. And I could sense Jade sinking lower and lower into her chair each time they were challenged. That's how this trial started. And I am just thankful to be a part of it. And let's all of us work together so that Colten's death can shine a light in this darkness. Thank you for hearing me.
So that again was Chris Murphy. He's the lawyer who's been advising the family, and he was in court almost every day of the proceeding, and obviously speaking about some of the
We'd like to
concerns
call
the family
on
has.
Mylan Tootoosis.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sheldon Watney, and I've been asked to share a few words. It's been a very long and a difficult road over the past year and a half. And I don't want us to forget the fact that there's a mother, 2 brothers, and a sister that are home grieving in deep anguish. And it's important that we continue to pray for them. You know, I was speaking to Colten's uncle, Alvin, this morning. And he said, you know, I just feel so beat. I don't feel like doing anything. And I told him, well, that's why we're here. That's why you're here. Is to continue on while the family's tired and gets their rest. That they're able to pick themselves up and continue on. You know, late Colten's life did matter. It does matter. And you being here today shows that. As was mentioned, it was very difficult to sit through a trial. And realistically, watch the Crown witnesses essentially be on trial. Everything that they raised, every statement that they made was essentially argued against by the Crown. And that's very difficult to sit and watch. You know, Jade here, as was mentioned, the strength that she's shown. She's a teacher in Edmonton. As well as myself, I'm a teacher by trade. And it's important that within our school systems, within our education systems, that we're able to teach this notion of fairness. Perhaps not equality, but fairness. That's one of the important messages, I think, that need to be carried forward. You know, I grew up here in Saskatoon. I have many, many of my good and best friends that are non-First Nations. We treat each other fairly. I'm from the Battlefords area, my reserve, red pheasant. There is a lot of difficulties there, as I had mentioned last night. There's a very sordid history in that area. The last mass hanging in Canada occurred in our area. 8 men were hung. Kids were brought over from the industrial school just to make sure that they understood. Those things aren't just 130 years ago. Our people still feel that today. They feel that hurt. They feel the injustice.
every day to learn how to be a good guest here on Indigenous territories. I spent the last 15 years of my life studying how racism continues. And as a white settler and a white person growing up, I know that we get messages every day from the media, from our schools, from our history textbooks, from our government, that tells us that white people are superior, and that tells us that Indigenous people are inferior. This is how racism works. And so I'm calling to action every white settler, every non-Indigenous person, to stop the media that are here, stop the myths and lies and racism and stereotypes that are spread about Indigenous people. Every day I see it, every single day. We are responsible and we have to be accountable, and you have to start making individuals accountable, because it is systemic, but it's also individuals that perpetuate this. There is much we can do in schools. We start in kindergarten. We start to have people learn anti-racist, anti-oppressive education. And one of the reasons that schools and media and governments and institutions are so afraid of it is because they're more afraid to make white people feel uncomfortable for their racism than they are about the lives of Indigenous people. And this is how power works. And this sign represents the fact that white settlers have used violence to steal land, have used violence to steal resources, have used violence to steal children, and it needs to stop somewhere, because now the violence is in our courtrooms and in our justice systems. And so thank you so much for giving me this time. This is a call out to all white settlers and non-Indigenous people to take action against racism. Thank you.
With that being said, I would like to call up Ben Fawcett from AROC.
My name is Ben Fawcett. I'm going to be very brief about this because I think Sheila did a really good job of calling on the settlers here to take action, and that was my intent in speaking today. In times like this, as a settler, it's very difficult to know how to react to this kind of injustice, which we see over and over and over again in this place that we also call home. A lot of you might be compelled to take action by writing to your local representatives, elected officials. Good. But that only goes so far, because elected officials represent systems that have limitations on how they can address these injustices. They're colonial structures. They have foundations that go back to the early period of colonization and systemically are reproduced every day. Indigenous people now are being asked to reconcile their anger, their frustration, their sadness, their grief with the ongoing reality of colonialism in Canada. Just as the Canadian state at the time of treaty asked Indigenous people to reconcile their loss of land, their systems of governance with the reality of European expansion and the establishment of private property on their lands. Just as the RCMP they asked people to reconcile their grief and their anger with the verdict, whatever it was going to be, before the verdict was even given. And I'm here to call out settlers who are here to say that we need to recognize and we need to uphold the understanding that without the return of land, without the ability to practice sovereignty for Indigenous peoples through their own systems of justice, there cannot be true reconciliation. So settlers, myself included, we all have a choice to make here. What do we do to move forward with this? We need to recognize that in these situations, justice exists outside of Canadian law. And we need to recognize that the system isn't broken. The system is operating exactly how it is always intended to operate since the foundations of colonialism in Canada. And I will always side with Indigenous people against the law and against Canada as a colonial settler state, and against those who willfully benefit and violently uphold the colonization of Indigenous people and lands. And that's all I wanted to say. I thank you for allowing me the opportunity, and justice for Colten, justice for Indigenous peoples, and let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. With that, we'd like to call on Jade Tootoosis, who will be our final speaker.
I was asked here to speak on behalf of Colten Boushie and his family and give the closing remarks. But before I do that, I want everybody to take in these signs that everyone brought here today. Everybody hold them up. And the media, take time to take photos of the truth that the people are choosing to speak here today. As Indigenous people, we live in a colonial time. We live in a time where injustice is the norm, where injustice is to be expected. And for me, and the truth of who I am as a Nehiyawak person, Nehiyawa man, a male Indigenous to these lands and territories, I swore allegiance to my traditional territory. I swear allegiance to my Indigenous women, to the Indigenous people who are currently suffering. And that's the truth that we need to remind ourselves of today. When Colten was shot, there was a lot of fear in the Battlefords area because we know this story. Everybody took the time to check in with their family. Where are you? What are you doing? There was real fear there. A fear all too familiar to us throughout the ages. And now's the day. Now's the time to flip the book to a new chapter and embrace the rage that is evident all across Canada today. To feel it fully. No time to avoid it. and oppress it. Embrace it and welcome it and use it to fuel our decolonization. Use it to fuel the stories you're going to tell your children of the change that needs to happen. We stand here today, and I was told specifically not to use the R word. That R word is not racism. We could talk about that all day. But that R word is reconciliation. Because we're not seeing it happen. In fact, we're standing here today under a colonial flag that's rising above this rally, looking down on us, as it always has. And it's tiring for everybody. We need to disrupt that narrative. We need to create the systemic changes to the colonial system that is currently oppressing us as Indigenous people. And that time starts today. We're seeing a lot of political agendas emerge and the R word coming out, reconciliation. If reconciliation was going to work, it would have worked when Trudeau got into the Prime Minister's office, and we're still not seeing it today. What we need is decolonization. What we need is decolonization. What we need is decolonization. And quote me in the media when I say that, because I want to show my grandchildren I stood here in the truth of who we are and where we come from on this day. As Indigenous people, all we need to see justice and change the system is the faith and the prayers of our ancestors, and they surround us here today. And I know you feel it. I know it's speaking to you. The vibration is there. And to my settler kinfolk, do not fear the truth. Like I said, change is coming. And it's going to be a beautiful day. Do not fear that truth. And I want everybody to repeat after me and close off in saying, justice for Colten! 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 Ladies and gentlemen, we're closing off we're deciding to close this rally off in a victory song for all the victories that are coming our way in the future.
like I say, it's evident that Colten's death has become more, that verdict has become more than just what happened inside that courtroom. As you can see, there were hundreds of people behind me chanting justice for Colten, holding signs. You just heard Mr. Tootoosis on the stage talking about how this is going to become a rallying cry, in his words, for decolonialization. We also heard from politicians talking about reconciliation, but I think it's evident this is not the last of the Colten Boushie story. This is not the last of what we've heard from it. This is just a launching point. Many of these people on the stage are saying that his death will not be in vain, that they are going to use it as a launching pad to talk about racism, to talk about decolonization. So the emotions here are very intense. That scene we just saw a few moments ago of everyone chanting justice for Colten, again, I think really sums up the mood, the feeling here with these hundreds and hundreds of people who've gathered. So I think we're going to let you guys go pretty quickly here, but I hope you got a sense of what was happening here, the hundreds of people who showed up. And again, this is just one of at least a dozen rallies that were happening across the country today, and there was a lot of people speaking very passionately. Boushie's family is here, and I think that again, this is not the last we've heard of Colten Boushie's name. This is probably not the last we've heard from these people who were speaking. And if they have their way, I think this is going to become a rallying cry for them. So with that, we will let you go. I'm going to give you one last kind of shot of the crowd here as people are milling about, but I think that's it. Again, I'm Charles Hamilton with the CBC. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll bring you the latest as soon as when we have it.
I think it's